kind of didn't know where one thing stopped and one thing started, and I was just like, wow, VR is going to change entertainment forever.
Right now in Japan, something crazy is happening. Essentially, we're witnessing a VR revolution unlike anywhere else in the world. And just like how decades ago, Japan essentially built the gaming industry as we know it, I have a feeling they'll be doing the exact same thing for the VR industry because of what's happening right now. So we're gonna travel 7,000 miles all the way to Japan and go on a trip from Kyoto to Tokyo to see firsthand exactly how Japan is changing the VR industry. Talk to the people doing it, and along the way, discover some things that I did not expect. And you may just find a couple of your new favorite VR games to try out.
All right, let's see what Thrill Seeker's got for us here in Japan. I just watched Bullet Train with my son the other day.
You know, I remember we were playing Half-Life 2 that first night, and the little dog kind of came around the corner and, like, you know, hit my leg. And I was kicking it, you know.
Can I just say I don't like hats being worn that way? I want to go back to like the 80s and 90s when it was cool to like bend them. Like, I don't know why we all got to have the flat bills anymore. It doesn't make any sense to me. It's like skinny jeans, you know, just a fashion break in the show. I don't like the hats with the flat bills. I never understood them. It's been around for what now, 5-6 years, maybe 10. And I would like just to go back to the old way. I mean, for fuck's sake, girls are wearing mom jeans, you know? They're wearing mom jeans, for God's sake. Can we just revert the hats back instead of the mom jeans? Why do we have to have the mom jeans, but we can't have the curved hats? Like, can we just do the curved hats and go back to sexy jeans and not mom jeans on these girls? For God's sake.
I was like freaking out. My body kind of didn't know where one thing stopped and one thing started. And I was just like, VR is...
I'm the first person, and I'm saying it here. Down with flat bills. Down with, hold on, hashtag down with flat billed hats. That's way too long. That's just way too long. That is too long of a hashtag right there. But I feel like we can shorten that and condense it into something meaningful. Down with flat billed hats. Down with them.
Is going to change entertainment forever.
Hashtag
and I think
no
there's
flat
still,
hats.
you know, I still love...
Here, I'm redoing it. Thank you, Chrono. Hashtag no flat hats. There we go. No flat hats. There's nothing to a flat hat. It's flat. You understand? There's no carbonation in a flat hat. There's no bubbles. Everybody loves bubbles. Everybody loves
traditional video games, and I love film. I love cinema.
No, disagree, Mad Style.
But
disagree.
The VR experience is something that's beyond.
I get it, because, you know, I get it. I get the argument. Mad Style is saying, I'm sorry, flat bill for the win is what Mad Style is saying. And I get where he's coming from. He's saying flat bill. It's crisp. It's fresh. It's new, right? But it's not worn. It's not experienced. It's not there for you when you need it, right? Every man needs a hat that's there for you when you need it, especially men that are bald. For God's sake, I don't want a flat billed hat. This man's bald. He should understand that. I want an experience
like that's ever been done before. And so, you know, as soon as we saw that was coming, we immediately switched gears.
Right.
And I was like, we've got to do a VR game.
This is Jake Haston, a longtime game developer with a pretty insane history. From Nintendo to Sega to EA working on Command & Conquer, he's now the CEO and art and creative director at 17-Bit, a game studio that has made Kyoto its home base. And just a bit about Kyoto. It's commonly known as Japan's cultural capital. Thousands of temples fill this city, giving it a very mythical and spiritual feel. And just about anywhere you look, you'll see how much Kyoto has inspired Japanese media and games even. I mean, I almost ran into the very real spider that is the Skulltula from Legend of Zelda. And even Nintendo's original headquarters are only a couple miles away from here. But this place also has had a massive inspiration on 17-Bit and their VR game Song in the Smoke, a mystical survival game that I've recently kind of fallen in love with. And walking around the Higashiyama District forests and then playing their game Song in the Smoke, it almost feels like the spirit of the forest was captured and put into a space that anyone can travel to and experience in VR. It's unique places like this that Japan's full of that have given creators of all types endless inspiration to pull from for centuries. And just a few minutes walk away, we arrive at 17-Bit's humble studio to talk about the transition from making traditional games for years to working on Song in the Smoke and what VR game dev in Japan is like.
So the whole team is longtime game developers, and we've got lots of experience making lots of video games, but going into VR, everything seems, on a surface level to be, okay, we got to do menus, like, okay, we got to do this. you're not using a controller, you're not using a mouse pad, you're using your hand. So it was really early days for the VR games in general.
Everything was new, and it just like, you felt like, okay, I'm just starting all over again.
It was the birth of a new medium. Everything becomes so much more intimate, so much more...
I'll tell you what we need instead of these fucking controllers. We are so early age in this, and every time I say this, people laugh at me. They're like, DG, VR's been around forever. Yeah, I get it, but we're still baby phase with VR. Fuck these controllers. Fuck these hand controllers. I want cameras. I want 4 different cameras. Sell it to me in a pack. Sell me cameras in a pack. Let me put the 4 cameras where they need to go in my game room area. Make it for people, the VR enthusiasts, and make these cameras be able to track my motherfucking hands like FOIP does for our face and Star Citizen. I want cameras that track my goddamn hands without these controllers, that track the movements of my fingers, for God's sake. Don't give me gloves. Don't give me controllers. Just my goddamn hands and some cameras on my hands, and make it so that I don't have to hold a fucking thing and get sweaty hands. Thank you. Thank you. This has been a real life announcement here from DG360.
Personal, your relationship with everything you're dealing with. It was just a whole new paradigm, and paradigm shifts like that don't come by very often. I'm hoping that people will give Song in the Smoke a try. A very passionate project that we spent a lot of time putting together. It's a world made for people who want to get out and sort of live this alternate life. Right? Kind of hand-authored world that you're living in, but it's very free-form, and it's all about your own decisions and how you want to build up your camp, how you want to treat things. And it's designed to just be a place that you want to go to and spend a bunch of time and go on these adventures. And kind of a niche audience. It's a VR game. It's also a survival game. And so that crossover, may not be so big, but I think that when people do get into it, they realize that this is something that you do want to just keep coming back to and spend a lot of time there.
I'd love it.
And so we're really hoping that people
I need a haptic cod piece.
Appreciate this,
that I do, Fingers.
So I'm pretty sure Japan has the most VR game studios out of any country in the world. And it's crazy how dense.
Not only do I need cameras to track my hands, I also need the haptic cod pieces. Right. I need that haptic cod piece to really, what... Fingers. I see you, Fingers. I see you, Fingers.
Hence everything else. Because just right down the street, we get to quickly stop by another VR game studio, Character Bank, responsible for the award-winning VR title Ruins Magus, and where I got to live out one of my all-time dreams.
I'm ready to be motion captured.
Throwing on a full motion capture rig, one that was even used for the development of the game.
Those.
You'd think that these studios being in such close proximity to each other, there'd be some weird competition, but it's kind of the opposite.
Yeah, it should be collaborative. It should be collaborative.
So it's almost like
all of this should be collaborative. People that listen, there should be competition, but there isn't. And you know why? Because the VR space is so new, and there's so many pioneers in the space, and they have heart. They got el corazón and fuego. It's on fire. They love it, and you can see it because they're like, I'm not going to compete on in this genre of gaming because it's so new. I want to enhance. I want to learn. I want to get with other developers and collaborate and make this amazing. Make it even more amazing. Get this shit on Star Trek level. I like that.
For sure, yeah. That's how, we have a little bit of a rivalry with My Dearest, but we're also good friends. They have that tightness. Let's band together, let's work together, and help bring Japan into VR.
Yeah. Okay, so not gonna lie, I think Kyoto has turned into probably one of the favorite places I have ever been to in my life. Between the thousands of years of history and just the feeling this place gives, it feels like decades of Japanese media suddenly kind of just makes more sense now, if that makes sense. And talking with these VR studios, I don't think they could exist anywhere else. And they're making actually really good games too. But we're far from over with this journey, and I've saved some of the best for last. So let's hop on the Shinkansen or bullet train back to Tokyo. But you know what? First, I think it's time for a random Japan fact. Most places in the world measure the size of rooms by square footage or square meters, i.e. this room is 12 foot by 12 foot. In Japan, however, rooms are measured by how many tatami mats a room fits. These straw mats
fucking tatami mats.
are standardized by size, so instead of saying this room is 144 square foot, you'd say this room fits 6 tatami mats.
Wow.
Kinda crazy. But now that tangent is over, we just arrived in Tokyo, and it's time to head to our first studio, My Dearest.
Fucking tatami mats. You know the country's awesome when they measure everything on tatami mats. I wonder how tatami mats high I am right now. I would say probably a good 5 tatami mats tall right now. How many tatami mats for my penis? Pepe, don't ask that question. That's a rude question. Barely a stitch. Barely a stitch.
Hello. Oh, here.
Not that type
Our
of
company founded in 2016. In the 7 years history, the first 3 years was hell.
They told us we were crazy good making like a visual novel on VR. It's like you are making a niche in a niche that's not gonna sell at all. It did.
So, My Dearest is kind of the perfect example of a VR startup studio. In 2016, they believed in their vision to make VR games. So they started a company and started making VR games, specifically in the form of VR graphic novels. And even though
I would feel if I would go to Japan that I would literally be in VR anyway in real life. Like literally flying into Japan, landing near Tokyo, getting out of the plane. The second I would get out of the plane, I would literally feel like I'm in VR anyway. That they're going to be on the cutting edge of VR technology. Of course, they're going to be the leader. South Korea, I think, as well. Zuckerberg might want to take a few notes here and fly over and make a headquarters for Meta over there. Like, it just makes sense, man. Like, they're living in VR in the real every single day. I love it. I love it. I love it.
People said it wouldn't work, they did it anyways, and eventually it did work. And after releasing a relatively decent hit, Tokyo Chronos, in 2019, they had the funds and success to make their next game, which did well enough to grow the studio to make the next one. And with each title, My Dearest has evolved from interactive VR graphic novels to fully fleshed out VR games, with their most recent being Dyschronia episodes 1, 2, and soon to be 3, where you go back in time to solve a crazy reality crime. It's the kind of thing that just really works in VR and really works for the Japanese market as well. And it's probably one of the coolest things to see studios like My Dearest popping up in Japan. I mean, VR studios virtually didn't exist a decade ago, and we're here witnessing something successful starting from nothing. But of course, there's more to the virtual reality industry than software. And here's where Japan is really interesting. Not only does it hold dozens of VR software studios, but there's also multiple VR hardware companies. From the big guys at Sony making, well, of course, the PlayStation VR, to a few smaller companies like DiverX and Shiftall, a subsidiary of Panasonic, both making VR hardware globally for a more niche market. And at the Shiftall office, it was kind of crazy seeing how fast the prototype phase is when developing this hardware. I've definitely talked about them quite a bit in the past, from the Megane X to the Hardtor X full body tracking solutions, but really, Shiftall focuses on making things for the niche VR user, mostly people that really want full body tracking within apps like VRChat but don't have the money for base stations. Which, another interesting thing about VRChat, it is incredibly popular in Japan. Like, so popular that just walking down the street in Tokyo, I ran into a guy wearing a VRChat shirt. Yeah, that's never happened in the States.
Of course.
And a lot of Shiftall's products are for the Japanese VR chatter, or VR user in general, including one product that recently got quite a bit of, well, weirdly placed hate online. You may recognize this, the Mutalk, trashed on by many reaction tubers. It's actually built pretty specifically for the Japanese market. Think small apartments, thin walls, and a bunch of people that love to socialize in VR chat all day and night and don't want to keep everyone else up. It's a very respectful society, although it is a very funny looking device. I get why it's gotten so much hate in the West, but it does have a specific purpose. What? And just down the road, another company.
No, this needs to be the thumbnail, and no, I don't agree with this, except for in the bedroom with Christy. This is the only place I would use this. But other than that, no, not at all. We already talked about how we aren't even going to need the goggles anymore. Mute me. Why would I ever want to mute myself, Starlet? That's something I would never do. I'm a very loud person. Just ask my neighbor. Yeah. She loves me. She loves me. She loves me, Pepe. She's knocking on the door right now. Again? All right, sorry. Pepe, go answer that, please, dude. Just tell her I'm not down here streaming.
It's a very respectful society, although it is a very funny looking device. I get why it's gotten so much hate in the West, but it does have a specific purpose. And just down the road, another company I've talked about before, DiverX, is working on something
this device is used to learn how to tickle a woman in the right way. Also for women, to learn how to use your mouth in other different ways. And that's enough. Is that enough? Is it enough X-rated stuff? Am I gonna get banned? Okay.
Funny looking device. I get why it's gotten so much hate in the West, but it does have a specific purpose. And just down the road, another company I've talked about before, DiverX, is working on something that not many other companies really dare. A Steam VR tracked haptic glove made for not enterprise users, but consumers, even if it's a very niche use case. And this is where Japan really just feels and does things so different than anywhere else in the world, especially regarding VR development. I feel like after talking with hundreds of XR hardware and software companies from around the world, so many of them are wrapped up on one of two things. One, making as much money as possible from the enterprise use cases, which is totally valid. Defense contracts really do sell. Or two, just
what's that? I'm not. Can we get cameras inside of that mouth device so that we can see how people are using their tongues? Like, the machine's like, I'm sorry, you are not doing this correctly. I'm trying. No, I'm sorry, you are not doing that correctly. Try this game again.
making something as mainstream as possible. And that's exactly what's weird about all these companies. Full body tracking, VR gloves, anime VR graphic novels, and survival games in VR are some of the most niche things you could possibly make. But not only is it working, but in their own way, they are slowly and organically making these niche things more accessible to anyone that wants in. And that's kind of the human definition of being passionate about something. Building for the niche to share and innovate on the thing that they love. Not every product or game has to be some device that's going to make VR go more mainstream. Sometimes building for the people that are already here is a perfectly viable way to go. And just because you're building for the niche doesn't mean that you can't have massive mainstream successes. And a great example of that is, again, right down the road in Tokyo, Hiki, another VR startup that has just raised $57 million in a Series A funding round.
Please try again. Please try again. Please try. Futz.
And their entire business is building massive virtual events. You may recognize them as VCAD or Virtual Market, and that's exactly how they started. Hosting and curating virtual events within VRChat, eventually breaking 1 million attendees in a single virtual event. Of course, bring in foot traffic and you bring in massive sponsors like Disney. And they're now building VR cloud services to bring these events to even more people. And the weirdest part about all of this is that I went to 2 hardware manufacturers and 4 studios all making crazy VR stuff, and they're all within a 3-hour train ride. Some of them even just right down the street. There's just nothing like this anywhere in the world. But beyond that, I think my real biggest takeaway is something that I didn't really expect. Even though I'm 7,000 plus miles away from home and the culture, surroundings, and language couldn't be any more different than what I'm used to, VR and its possibilities and the passion for it is kind of like this universal language that connects everyone everywhere, in VR or out of it. And coming to Japan, seeing how much
listen, I know what's going to happen. I'm calling it right now. Thrill Seeker is going to move to Japan. I am calling it right now.
Excitement and passion there is for VR, and how many companies are striving to really make a difference by just building what they're passionate about, really filled me with a lot of excitement that I think I've been missing lately. Recently, everything has kind of felt like this weird race to mainstream. Like increasing headset adoption to get more users in VR is the only thing.
Yeah. Like Americana capitalism is not the greatest setup for VR. Like if you're going over here and you're seeing people who are absolutely in love with developing VR and the tech that's involved with VR, you see the people here smiling. They got passion in their hearts. You can see the difference. And then we fast forward and we look at America's version of it. And it's completely gone. Where the fuck was Zuckerberg at? I'm actually trying to find Zuckerberg. Yeah. And then here's America, right? Like this is the difference. This is like, you can feel the fakeness. You can feel AI robotic Pinocchio Zuckerberg try to be a real boy. You know, like everything about what's happening in meta right now is completely. We watched a Thrill Seeker video a week ago that was talking about their marketing dude that basically pissed all over the community. What was the name of that game we were watching? It was like Ender's Game. It was a VR game, and they were throwing around a ball. And the guys who created it took a backseat. They got out of it, and the marketing guy went all over it and basically just shit all over the community. It was terrible. It was terrible.
Weird race to mainstream. Like, increasing headset adoption to get more users in VR is the only thing people care about. But so much of the industry has kind of forgotten about the people that are already here, the people that already love VR. And maybe it sounds weird, but talking with these developers made me feel less lonely, I guess, regarding my passion for VR. There's other people out there that feel the same about this thing that I do and that we do, and they're dedicating their lives to it, all because of that passion for the possibility, building and sharing worlds and experiences, bringing people together, and building the hardware that does it, all while practically being neighbors doing it, working together towards a common goal. And this isn't even counting the massive companies in Japan that are doing this on a larger scale like Sony. And when you do factor in Sony, you've got all ends covered, the mainstream and the niche. And it's awesome. And I gotta be real.
Oh my God! Dance off. Thank you so much, Starlet. You're amazing. You're supporting me. You're supporting my life. You're giving me life. I can eat food now. Thank you so much, Starlet. Freaking love you, Starlet.
Well, if Japan is going to change the VR industry, it's purely going to be out of this passion, this legit enthusiast build for the niche, and the niche will organically grow mindset. And it turns out that's the exact thing that fueled Japan to change the gaming industry all those decades ago. And it's likely the very sauce that VR could use a little more of, and that Japan is supplying. So this was kind of a weird video for me. I think this one was a bit of a bigger project than I originally thought, and it took me a lot longer than I originally thought it would. Total around 2 terabytes and 200 hours of footage for a 13 or 14 minute long video, but I think it was worth it. In terms of VR culture and enthusiasm, there's legit no place like Japan, and its developers are something I really want to connect you guys with. It had such an immense impact on me and made me feel proud to be a VR fan. But of course, I also wanted to say thank you to my Patreon supporters for making this.
Thank you to my Patreon supporters and all the people on YouTube that watch because I have something to say and think that I'm not a parasite. Well, I'm applauding you. Thank you. Thrill Seeker's awesome. He's going to move to Japan. We all know it. I'm going to type in here, you're going to move to Japan. We all know it, bro. Great video. And I just know it. He's moving to Japan. I'm calling it. And let's get back to the show.